Right. So, welcome everyone. First meeting of the year. For anyone who's new to the group, just a quick explanation. We're all about the positivity of getting better and getting over these conditions. Some of the things we're going to hear today with our lovely guest expert speaker, Michaela. Give us a wave, Michaela. Some of the things, as you will know, symptoms can be pretty grim, very traumatic, very disrupting to our lives and play games with our minds. But what we always seek is how do we all get to a better place, whatever that is. And part of that is what we're doing today. We're sharing advice, sharing support. No one ever has to be isolated with what we do. And boy, do we go through things. Every week, I talk to new members and hear a very similar story that you'll all recognize. Everybody thinks I look so well. They think I could be making it up. I'm worried people think I'm drunk or on drugs. If I'm employed, my employer wonders why on Monday I was in and I was fine, and on Tuesday morning I phoned in and said I just couldn't get out of bed. So it's all half of the course. And on top of all of your physical symptoms, we get mountains of anxiety, loss of confidence, worrying about whether this is how it's going to be for the rest of our life. And breaking news, no, it's not. Just one little thing here. We're all grown-ups here. Think back over your own lives. When has any period of your life been frozen in time forever? And it never is. So what you may be going through now is a really bleak time, really horrible time, but it is going to get better. And that's, again, part of our job at this group is to help you get there as soon as possible. So I think enough of my waffle. Today we've got the wonderful Michaela Burton, who will start any moment now. We've also got our professional question master, Kelly. Give us a wave, Kelly, who has been doing this job for over 5 years now. And all I can tell you confidentially, the pay is rubbish. So well done, Kelly. We're going to have Michaela doing a presentation. And I say, remember, this is recorded, so you'll be able to go back to recording at any time. And at the end of that recording, just before we go into question and answer session with Michaela and Kelly, we've just got a couple of announcements and a quick video to share with you where a researcher is looking for some volunteers. So hopefully it's going to be a really interesting couple of hours. And Michaela, I am going to hand over to you now. And if you could please introduce yourself for the sake of some of our new members, just so they know what you've been up to for the last 20 years or so. So thank you, Michaela, over to you.
Hi, so I'm Michaela Burton. I'm a vestibular audiologist. I started in the NHS 27 years ago, and I've specialised in vestibular and balance problems for the last 25 years, mostly through the NHS, although I left there 12 months ago, and I'm purely private practice now. I'm based at London Road Clinic in Leicester alongside Professor Ray and Mr. Banerjee. I also practice from a place in Ashby, do Zoom appointments, things like that. But yes, I've been doing this for a very long time. I will try and keep this relatively short because Kevin is well aware that I can happily talk about this topic for hours. There's so much that I want to share with you and want everybody to know and to help you with, but I'm quite aware also that you don't like looking at screens for a long time. It doesn't make you feel any better. So I'll try and keep it limited, but also try and give you as much information as I can. So let's just see if I can share the screen as well as I did in the practice. Is that shared?
Oh. Not yet.
No.
No.
Oh, dearie me, it's gone into a completely different thing. Sorry. Ah, how do I come
We're
into
about to
that?
see
Go into that.
Michaela's Sainsbury's
Oh,
shopping list, I have a feeling.
oh dear.
Come on, Michaela, we
Right.
did
We did
practice
it.
this
This
one
we did
earlier.
this perfectly a minute ago, didn't we? I've lost my share screen bit now.
There you
That
go,
one.
folks. Even Zoom can make audiologists weep. There
Okay,
we go, Michaela.
let's.
Well done. That's it. And then that's it. And
Is
then
that now
that's good.
working?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
And this is why I talk more rather than work with computers. So this is me, essentially. So Kevin's asked me to talk about rehab in the home and mindfulness with balance conditions. But first of all, we need to kind of delve a little bit more into exactly what we're talking about when we talk about balance and anxiety. We often talk about vestibular problems as balance problems, but not all balance problems are vestibular in nature. Balance as a whole is made up of your eyes, your vestibular system, that inner ear balance system, but it's also your full musculoskeletal system, your brain's ability to process all these information and to work out what it's supposed to do, and everything respond accordingly. Now, this screen does move, so if you don't like moving things on the screen, please just close your eyes for a couple of seconds. Now, a lot of you are going to be perfectly familiar with the fact that if moving your head makes you feel off balance, it makes you not want to do it. So you stop moving your head quite so much, and we start getting a lot more kind of rigid body movements. This causes the neck muscles to get immobile, to stiffen up. That neck muscle tension starts causing headaches. Your posture and your general movement becomes altered, which makes things even more difficult and can cause other balance difficulties, which makes you start to avoid more things. But unfortunately, these failures to move much and that avoidance tactic will prevent you actually from improving your balance function. Now, the avoidance tactics are caused by your fight and flight response starting to kick in, which is a normal response. It's your brain's way of telling you to stop doing things that potentially are excuse me, that are potentially dangerous for you or that it deems to be threatening. So it stops you doing it to protect you. But again, with balance issues, with vestibular issues, it means that your brain doesn't get the information it needs to start to actually solve the problem. But it's not just your actual vestibular function. It's exactly as Kevin was saying, that not wanting to go out, to go to the shops, to go and socialize because that social embarrassment. What do people think of me? People think I must be drunk at 10 o'clock in the morning. And it increases your anxiety, that fear of what other people are going to think, what other people are going to say. And that prevents you generally from wanting to go out as much as you did or going to certain places, certain situations. But that then also can cause problems with the anticipation of, well, if I'm dizzy when I'm going to the supermarket, or if I'm dizzy when I take the children going to school, then I'm also going to be dizzy in other situations. And you start avoiding things that, although you haven't had the experience of dizziness there, you're fearful that you might. So you get more and more isolated. And again, that failure to move reduces your ability to actually begin to compensate for the problem, to resolve that dizziness. Anxiety is a normal response to an abnormal situation. This cannot be said enough. It's very, very common that because you have that anxiety response, there's the increased feeling of there must be something really wrong with me. And the anxiety gets worse, but it's a normal physical brain response. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are very, very familiar with all of these, that increase in that heart rate where your heart's beating that much faster, that change to your breathing pattern, that shorter, shallower breathing, that hyperventilation, and that also actually causes dizziness. The anxiety response also causes changes to digestion, to blood flow to your limbs. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with having jelly legs, can cause feelings of tingling in the lips and fingers. dry mouth. So those of you that I see walking everywhere with a bottle of water because your mouth is very dry, because the anxiety levels are very, very high. Now, as you are all very aware, feeling off balance and dizzy will increase your stress levels. The more stressed you get, the worse you feel, the worse you feel, the more stressed you get. So you get caught in that loop of being dizzy, causing stress, and the stress causing dizziness. I know a lot of people come and see me and tell me that they've had a lot of people tell them when they've seen, for example, GPs or a variety of different doctors saying, it's just because you're stressed. You're dizzy because you're stressed. Well, yes, there is dizziness being caused by the stress, but the stress is coming from somewhere, and it's important to tackle that. Now, often what we find is when we actually tackle the vestibular issue and start vestibular rehab exercises and start to improve the balance function, the anxiety itself starts to reduce. And as the anxiety reduces, that then also reduces the feelings of imbalance that the anxiety itself is causing. And we start backing up out of that cycle of stress causing imbalance and imbalance causing stress. It all starts to go in a much better direction. Now, I've mentioned this when I've given talks before, and I'll sell this to the cows come home. Unfortunately, I don't have shares in this book, but it's the best book that I've found that really explains really well exactly what's going on in the brain with the anxiety response. It gives examples of ways that you can try and help yourself with it, but it also shows you actually how normal your responses are. It's very much one of these books that you read it and you go, oh, well, of course I feel like that. Of course I've been behaving this way. It's a normal response. It's not just me. It's not all in my head. I'm not going crazy. It's a normal response caused by the anxiety. It's also really, really helpful for partners or for other family members, anyone that's trying to help somebody that's experiencing an anxiety response. Obviously, this isn't particularly aimed necessarily at people with balance or vestibular issues. It's an anxiety thing, but it's really, really good. So that very brief overview of anxiety and balance, what can we actually do about it? We can do a lot, but there's no quick and easy way around it, as much as I would love to say there was. It takes a lot of very hard, very consistent work on your parts over quite a long period of time, but it does get there. Nothing ever stays the same. It will get there with the practice. It's not just one thing that we're tackling. Now, in the medical field, it's very, very common to get a number of different symptoms lumped down into one diagnosis, and you treat that one thing, and that solves all the problems. Balance is absolutely the opposite to that. We can have one symptom, that feeling of dizziness or imbalance, and there can be a number of different things that are adding into it. We've got the vestibular, the inner ear balance, all sorts of things going on with your physical health, all sorts of things going on with mental health. So it's very important that we tackle both the vestibular, the physical, and the mental aspects of things. As I say, often when we tackle the vestibular, that then helps the mental health side of things, but sometimes we do need to tackle more than that one thing. So vestibular care, so inner ear balance function, you've got to move your head. It's very, very tempting to keep your head very, very still and really restrict your head movement, but that is the worst thing that you can do. You've got to move, even if it's just the smallest amount for a very short time, but very often throughout the day. It's better than nothing. You've got to keep your head moving as much as you are able to do so, that you're safe to do so. Obviously, if you have neck issues, then that's something you would need to have a chat to somebody about to see what's safe and what's not to with that, but you've got to move your head. The VOR exercise on my next slide, I'll show you the VOR. What you want to gradually do is start off nice and gentle. Basically, we're trying to find where your boundary is with your balance system and just gently keep nudging at it. So we can start off with nice slow movements and gradually build up that speed. but you've got to find where it actually provokes a little bit of the feeling of imbalance. If you stick with doing only what feels perfectly comfortable and fine, you're not going to be doing anything because your brain is already working with that quite happily. We don't want to push so hard that you feel awful, because all that will happen is that anxiety response and that fear will kick in to prevent you doing it so much. So we've got to do just little and often, really, really consistently. To do the VOR, you need to focus on a stationary object, whether it's your thumb, door handle, light switch, plug socket, anything stationary. Keep your eyes locked on that one thing and turn your head as though you're saying no to it. Now, we don't want to go so fast that it looks like the object is moving. Equally, you don't want to go so slow that you're barely moving. You don't want to go too far that you're struggling to keep your eyes on that object or make your eyes start to be sore. You want a nice, clear movement. Imagine it's somebody that's asked to borrow a huge amount of money and you know they have no intention of giving it back to you. It's a very definite no. Now, you need to do this for about 20 to 30 seconds, 4 times every day. Don't worry if it doesn't feel very nice or it makes you feel a little bit off balance or dizzy. Keep practicing. It does get easier, but it only gets easier with the practice. So, turning your head, eyes locked on it, 20 to 30 seconds, 4 separate occasions every day. Keep practicing. Now, it's really, really important to bear in mind that this is not a quick fix. This isn't going to be a case of you do it for a few days or a few weeks and everything's great. This takes quite a long time and it can take many, many months to improve. So you've got to stick at it. It's well worth it, but keep practicing and keep going with it. There's lots of other, I'll just very quickly just go back to the vestibular side of things. There are lots of different exercises to do for the vestibular function and to improve that. And it's very much a case of finding specifically what difficulties it is that you're having with your vestibular system and giving you specific exercises in a very gradual progression to improve those. So, but the VOR is your kind of your basic start off, get yourself going exercise. So physical care, I mentioned before about if you're having neck problems with the moving the head. If you are having neck problems and you've got an awful lot of neck pain, or you've got other issues such as spondylosis, or you've had neck injuries, speak to a physiotherapist that specialises in necks and get that treated as best as you can. Now, neck stiffness, purely when it's vestibular and because of reduced movement, the neck will gradually ease up as we progress with the exercises. Because we get you moving your head more, the muscles will gradually start to ease out and get more supple and get their strength back again. Any issues you have with your back, with your hips, your legs, all of these kinds of things, really important that you tackle that side of things, because obviously if you have, for example, problems with your knees, that will make you move differently and that will potentially put you off balance because of how you're holding yourself differently. So all of these things can have an impact as well. You need to keep as physically active as you are safe to do so. Now, it's all well and good me saying it's really important to get out and walk and move around. Understandably, for some people, it's not that easy and not necessarily as safe to do so unaided, in which case using walking aids, if that is what you need to do in order to move more, please do so. Ideally, we would like people walking unsupported, but it is better to be active using walking support of some form, whether it's walking frames, walking sticks, or walking poles are really good because that gives a much better posture when you're walking. But it's better to walk using aids than to not be walking about at all. Keeping your body as fit as possible is always good, so anything that keeps your muscles active. What we often find with vestibular difficulties is that people have reduced their movements that much that their muscles have started to lose their strength in their legs, which then causes further problems when they're then trying to mobilize around more. So try and keep your leg muscles strong, keep your back strong, all of these kinds of things. If you have things, for example, like diabetes, making sure that your foot health is kept on top of, because the last thing you want to do is kind of reduce the sensation in your feet, because that will also cause balance problems. But all these other physical aspects also need to be taken into consideration and tackled and treated accordingly. Mental care. And again, I could talk about this for a very, very long time. There's so much involved in mental health care. It's particularly with vestibular issues, as I say, being off balance will cause feelings of stress and anxiety. It's impossible not to, because it affects all aspects of your life. It will affect your home life, your social life. It affects work. It affects being able to look after the kids. All of these things will therefore cause you stress. So it's really important that you actually do acknowledge that that stress and anxiety is there. It's not there and that's causing all of your problems, but it's there because the balance problems that you're having, and it's also unfortunately adding into the difficulties that you're having and feelings of dizziness. So really important that you acknowledge its presence so that it can also be tackled. Acknowledge the impact that this stress is having on you. Talk to your family, to your friends, and share this information with them if you can. Having good communication can help really reduce that stress and anxiety and that worry of, but what are people going to think of me? If you tell them actually what's going on, they're not going to be coming up with their own ideas of what might be going on that might be causing you the difficulties. Try and reduce the avoidant tactics as much as possible. As I say, you need to keep as active and as mobile as you can. Try not to isolate yourself, to stop going out with friends and to go and participate in things as much as possible. Mindfulness techniques, breathing techniques, and I'll go over these with you in a short time. It's really important to be kind to yourself. A lot of people that I see unfortunately come in very, very stressed because I shouldn't be feeling like this, or I should be doing better than this. And that really doesn't help. And it just adds into that stress and that anxiety and that upset. And really, really important, where needed, in whatever way, seeking further support when you need it, whether that's by seeking counselling, whether it's seeking other healthcare kind of input. It's really important to seek that support. This support group, I cannot tell you how important it is and the fantastic work that you all do with this group. I know when I met Kevin for the very first time, I told him I was very wary of support groups because often I'd found in the past that it had been very much a forum where people would go on and tell other people how awful everything was and their life was ending and they've had the worst of everything, and it brought people down. Kevin has worked so very hard, and all of you work so very hard at acknowledging the difficulties that are there with the balance, working to improve them, but also really providing that positivity and that knowledge and understanding with each other that things do improve, things do get better, and you help each other to get out that other side. I cannot tell you how important that is. So kindness to self, we're not very good at this. Would you say to yourself the things that you say would you say to others what you say to yourself? So, for example, would you say to your best friend, if they were experiencing what you were experiencing, would you be saying to them, well, you should be doing better than this. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. Just get on with it. Do better. You wouldn't dream of it. And the reason you wouldn't dream of it, because you know it wouldn't be helping them. It wouldn't make them feel better. It wouldn't actually help treat anything. It would just make them feel really bad about themselves. And yet we say these things to ourselves, and that will just increase the stress levels, which makes things even harder. Improve your self-talk. Think about, are you saying things to yourself that you think is acceptable to say to somebody else? And if it's not, then Don't be saying it to yourself either. Think about how you would actually help your loved one, your best friend, if they were experiencing what you're experiencing. Acceptance of the difficulties that you're currently experiencing is really important. Acknowledging them and saying, yes, I'm finding this hard. This isn't nice. I'm struggling. Being able to acknowledge it and accept that that's the case at the moment really can be very helpful. Doesn't mean saying, right, well, this is going to be how it's going to be forevermore, because that's not being kind to yourself and it's not helpful. But acknowledging the difficulties that you're having, because then you can actually start to tackle those things. But it's important to pace yourself. I often find people get very, very enthusiastic with the exercises for the vestibular rehab. Right, okay, so if I do this all day, every day, how quickly can I get better? But that can just tire the brain out. You can overstimulate, overwhelm the brain until it hits the point where it can't deal with any more. And again, that will just make yourself feel worse. It's important to give your brain lots of little breaks during the day. Let your brain just breathe for a short time, not be thinking, right, well, I'm going to have a bit of a break, but whilst I'm having a break at work, I'm just going to go put the kettle on. I'm going to have a quick flick through my phone just to check my emails. And I've got to remember to phone so-and-so, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do that. That isn't having a break. Having a break is actually letting your brain just stop and have a moment to itself and not have to think about all sorts of other things and just pause, just for a short time, but little and often. This is something that I say an awful lot, little and often. The exercises for the vestibular rehab need to be done little and often. You need to pace yourself and take your breaks little and often. We're not designed to do lots of activity for hours and hours and hours and on end. We're designed as a species to have a short burst of activity, bit of a break, bit of socialization, bit more activity, bit of socialization, bit of a break. We need to get back into that. So how can you pace yourself? One of the ways you can do it is breathing techniques. Now, there's a whole variety of different breathing techniques, and it's about finding the one that works for you, that you enjoy, that you can actually do comfortably. My favourite one is the 7-11. I call it the longer out than in because I think 7-11 is a bit demanding. The idea of it being that you breathe in for 7 and out for 11. But basically, it's longer out than in. And there's also box breathing, which I'll come back to in a second. So the 7-11 or the longer out than in breathing technique is just in and out through the nose, but it's taking a really long, really gentle breath in and an even longer and more gentle breath out. And this is so long and gentle that if you put your hand underneath your nose and you're doing that long out breath, you can barely feel the air passing on your fingers. So if you all just take a moment just to pop your hand underneath your nose, take a very gentle breath in, but make your out breath so gentle, so long that you can hardly feel that air pass on it. And feel just how slow and how gentle that needs to be. Okay. Now, with the breathing techniques, what I would suggest is that you practice this to start with when you're perfectly comfortable, perfectly fine, all is fine with things around you, and practice it so that you can do it without having to really put your hand underneath your nose to feel it. You can make sure that long out breath is really, really long, really gentle without actually sticking your hand underneath. Now, that will also help your brain learn that this is something that you do when all is calm. The long out breath actually within the brain tones down that fight and flight response. So it actually manages your brain to calm down essentially and just let it have a few moments. On top of all of that, it also means that you're taking a few moments when you're doing that breathing technique to purely focus on what you're doing with that breath in that moment. You're not focusing on everything else going around you. You're not focusing on the emails and the phone calls or the thing that you're having to go out and do next. It's just giving your brain just that short time just to focus in just on that one thing. So it's mindful activity. The nice thing about this one, I find, is with it being so long and so gentle, but in and out through the nose, nobody can see you do it. So it's something that you can apply when you're out and about and starting to get stressed, or you're sitting in the car and you're starting to get yourself upset about all the traffic or whatever. Nobody can turn around and go, "What are you doing?" Or, "Are you all right? Oh my God, you look so awful. What's happening? Are you okay?" It's just a nice, calm, gentle thing. Nobody can see you do it. So that's one of the reasons that I particularly love this one. Box breathing is another one that's very, very commonly taught. And the idea of the box breathing is that you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. So 4 seconds each time. And the idea of it being a box is kind of you're tracing the 4 breaths in and out and the holding. So as I say, breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and hold for 4, and repeat. And that again just helps regulate the breathing, and it brings your focus just into your breathing at that time. So again, nice and mindful. But if you have a look on your Google breathing techniques for calming, there's all sorts of different ones. It's about trial and error and practice to find what it is that works for you. Now, as I mentioned before, the value of support groups, the importance of seeking the right support for you. Now, balance and vestibular issues, it's one of these things that, as I'm told by a number of people, is a very niche area of speciality. There's a lot of ENT doctors, there's an awful lot of GPs, there's an awful lot of neurologists, a lot of physiotherapists that potentially people are referred to with regards to their balance, that actually their interest and speciality isn't in balance. Their experience is very limited. They can potentially, hopefully, diagnose correctly, but then actually knowing and fully understanding exactly what can be done about that may not be the highest in their skill set. So it's really, really well worth, if you've not had particularly helpful care previously, if I put it that way, really, really well worth putting some research in to find a specialist, whose their entire thing is balance and vestibular issues. Now, we're very, very fortunate in Leicester. We have Professor Peter Ray, and there's a number of other consultants locally that do deal with balance issues. You can see people via NHS. If there isn't anybody locally to you in the NHS, it's potentially well worth looking into the private sector. Sometimes it is really just worth the money to spend just to get somebody that really knows what they're doing to be able to get you diagnosed accurately and to actually start your treatment accurately and give you that support. I know it's not ideal to have to spend the money sometimes, but that option is there. It's really important where you can to communicate with those around you, your partner, your family, your work, if necessary, your friends. Let people know what's going on, what difficulties it is that you're having. Let them support you where they can. Let them know how to support you if you can. The thing with support is that it's fantastic being given that support. You can get a lot of information, a lot of help that you need. But actually, there's been lots of research studies that have shown that when you provide support to others in whatever way you can, actually it really benefits you as well. Mentally, it can do wonders, and it can really, really lift your spirits and make you feel that sense of connection, that sense of kind of being part of the society that you're in, and being able to, trying to think of the word for it now, kind of playing an important part in the world that you're in. So not only receiving support, but actually giving support is really, really good for mental health. As I say, it doesn't have to be a big thing. Sometimes even if it's just sitting and having a chat to someone and saying, I know what you're experiencing, I've had these difficulties too, and this is what I did about it. Or I can't tell you what I can do, but I can be here with you and acknowledge the difficulties that you're having, because I understand those too. Mindful activity, as I've mentioned before, being able to take those few minutes break, let your brain breathe for a short time. A lot of people have this kind of preconceived notion of mindfulness as being this kind of thing where you're sat in a quiet room in a certain position, eyes closed, chanting or listening to some meditation things. Well, that's one kind of mindful activity. But mindful activity is purely finding something that works for you, that just lets your brain tune out from everything else around you, tune out from what you're having to do this afternoon, what you've got planned for the next day, what you're having to do for work, what you're having to get for dinner. It's just that chance for your brain to just lose itself in something it enjoys. And it's whatever works for you. Regular short walks are fantastic. It's physical activity, so that's good for your muscles. It's good to get out in the fresh air, gives you time to think, to notice what's going on in the environment around you, the changing of the colour of the leaves, all the different wildlife that might be around. All of these things, fantastic on short walks. Things like Tai Chi, Pilates, yoga. Now, I know yoga can be a little bit energetic for vestibular difficulties sometimes, and might be pushing things a bit for different positions. Tai Chi particularly is fantastic. It's really gentle, repetitive body movements, so brilliant for improving vestibular function. Brilliant physically because you're doing those gentle movements, it's keeping your muscles moving, and it's also nice and mindful, nice and peaceful. It's finding the right style for you, or the right teacher, but it's worth trying a few different things. You can also get seated Tai Chi, so that can be very helpful if mobility is very limited or restricted. Obviously, meditation, listening to different meditation tapes or apps on your phone, all these kinds of things. Have a try of different ones. It might be that the voice that's doing a recording isn't to your taste, if you like, but a different one might be. Lots of people like reading or listening to audiobooks or listening to certain types of music or playing their own music, different arts and crafts, anything that it is that you enjoy. So a lot of people enjoy painting, but bring these things in to your daily life again. Doing it every now and then isn't going to make much difference. Try and do this actually as part of your exercise program, and do it a little bit throughout the day. So again, little and often. There's a whole variety of different mindfulness apps that you can get, such as Headspace and Calm. They're probably the two biggest and most popular ones, but there's a whole variety of different ones. A lot of them are free. Some of them do have paid for extra bits, or there are ones that you pay for. But again, have a try of different things, see what works for you, see what you enjoy, see what just makes your brain just go, yeah, I enjoy this, this is nice. And just let yourself just enjoy it. Now, acknowledging the positives. I know this can be a really difficult thing to do when it feels like all day, every day, you're just struggling with the symptoms that you're having and the impact that it has. Now, when I say look for 3 good things in your day, this can be from the tiniest thing. For example, I looked out the window this morning and noticed a whole load of my snowdrops had come up. And that's a lovely thing. It can be all the way up to full on jazz hands. Oh my goodness, that's the most incredible, amazing thing ever. Fantastic. But try and look for 3 good things in your day. From the tiniest thing all the way up to the greatest. Most of the time, it'll be the smaller thing. That's all good. But write them down. Write them in a notebook. Writing it down actually makes your brain process it differently. It fires up a lot more connections in the brain, which means it takes in an awful lot more. We are really good at completely discounting all the good things and focusing on the unpleasant things or the difficult things. But if we focus on all those difficult things all the time, that will seem like everything is all difficult and unpleasant. Taking a few moments just to make notice of these good little things that crop up help your brain realize that, okay, yes, there is all this unpleasantness or this difficulty, but actually there's also the snowdrops that have come up, and that's nice. Or my partner said a particularly nice thing, and it made me feel really good about myself for those few seconds. Write it all down. Also, having it written down, not only does it get your brain to pay more attention to them and acknowledge them more, having them written down means that on days that are particularly bad, you've then got a record of things that you can look back through and go, oh, yes, actually, I remember that. I remember they said that, and that was a really nice thing, because it will actually bring that feeling back again as well. So it just gives you kind of a little nice little record of just nice things to remember. It sounds quite simple and daft. It's quite difficult, I think, sometimes to get into the habit of making those notes and writing it down each day. It does get easier with the practice, same with most things, but actually it can make a real big difference. That's a very brief overview of mindfulness and vestibular rehab. And I shall let Kevin continue with the bits that he's going to bring in about the research and other things he's got that's helpful, and then we'll come back to the questions.
Brilliant, thanks. If you can stop sharing screen, that's it. That is wonderful. Let me just put in there. Michaela, you've done it again. You've covered so many points in there. And it is, I'm always struck with how you would say your original day job was very much the audiology, but how you over the years have seen it just goes so much hand in glove with how our minds can react to what is going on. My own personal experience, I went down with Meniere's, which for those who don't know, it's a very acute, awful. I used to have 2 hours of spinning till I just wanted to pass out. And that I thought was the end of me, the end of my life as I knew it, and thought my life would never change, all the classics. The worst thing was what was going on in the mind, feeling that's it. I was no longer fit for purpose. I couldn't provide for my wife, my kids, all the rest of it. And I have to say, as bad as the physical symptoms were, the mental pressure and anxiety were worse. So it was kind of no surprise in retrospect. And this took me far too long. It's really why the support group now, because I thought I could tough this out on my own and deny I was ill or not a perfect human being for too many years. Finally, I realized that I couldn't stop what was happening to me, but I could change the way I reacted to it. And what I did slowly but surely, and trust me, you guys can do it so much faster with help of such of these presentations. I discovered that obviously what was happening to me wasn't killing me, and I had no power to stop the attacks. But what wasn't helping with the attacks was getting so angry, so frustrated, so sad, grieving, and all the rest of it. That didn't help. It just made everything worse. And believe it not, towards the end of my attacks, which I touch wood no longer get, I was able to almost be calm whilst going through such a horrible physical thing partly through, yes, through experience, but partly through knowing it would end. It's 2 hours, suck it up, get on with it. And all I can tell you is mentally, it was such a relief to not have to deal with all the bad stuff in my head. So I really recommend what Michaela has been talking about. I'm the guy, my age, culture I come from. I used to laugh if people mentioned mindfulness. It's like, who would want to do that? I tell you, it works. I do it now. I can be out on. I'm lucky. I'm back on the mountain bike. Never thought I'd ride again, and now I'm out 3 times a week. I can be out there in a lane and really get into mindfulness about where I am, what I can hear, what I can see, and it's wonderful. So do try and practice what Michaela has been talking about. And just like riding a bike, the more you practice, the better you're going to get. Really does work. Michaela, I'm going to ask you to take a 5-minute break because we're going to come back. We've got lots and lots of questions for you. So, but you sort of relax for 5 minutes, and I've just got a few things to work through, a few notices. But thanks ever so much for part one. That was brilliant. Also, Michaela's slideshow will be available to members. You'll be emailed a link where you can download it. But you just take a breather, Michaela, and we'll be back to you very shortly. So I'll try and keep this very quick. And I have to do this on the video because I know there's probably a handful of members out there that didn't receive the email with a link to join this meeting. So the first chance they may get to see the meeting is on a recording. We definitely have a known issue. We send out more than 350 emails to members, so we have to use software. The software is called, it's almost irrelevant, it's called HubSpot, and it is not liked by people who've got an email that is probably your name at icloud.com. We've had 1 or 2 problems with people with emails of at yahoo.com and something called at me.com, which I think like iCloud is another Apple email. Apologies, as most of you know, we don't even have a bank account. We're just volunteers. We have to use this freely available software, and for some reason, some email providers do not like that software. They think it's spam, and we're trying to sell you life insurance or whatever. All we ever can suggest to members with those emails, if there's any chance they can register for a free email account, something like gmail.com, even if they just use that for receiving our members' emails, at least we know we can reach you with newsletters, news about upcoming events, and of course the invite to the meetings. So that said, anyone watching it, apologies if you couldn't join. That's the problem we've got, but the only answer we've got is to come up with different email accounts. Okay, some of you may remember last year we had a young lady called Katie Hargreaves, trainee clinical scientist at Manchester Uni in audiology, and she's ran a small study, questions to people with balance disorders, more about how we see the world and how is it affecting us as people. And Katie's asked if I could just play you a short, it's only 3-minute video. She'd like to get more volunteers, please, from our members. And again, older members will know what I say here. If we don't step up and volunteer for these things, who will? And it's really bad enough to get people to want to work within the balance, the medical field to do with balance conditions. So anyone who ever comes to us asking for help and participation, we always urge, please, if you can, do volunteer, because these guys need your input, your feedback, your experience to go on with their studies to one day become those professionals just like Michaela, who can help so many of us. So I'm just going to share screen and hopefully play this video that you'll be able to hear the sound. So here we go. Hopefully you can see that now, and we will play.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. Thank you for listening to my presentation today. So my name is Katie Hargreaves and I'm on the scientist training programme to be a clinical scientist in audiology, and as part of that we do a master's research project through the University of Manchester, and mine is in self-concept and illness identity in adults with chronic dizziness. So your first question might be, what is self-concept? And the definition we're using for this project is the individual's belief about himself or herself, including their attributes and who and what the self is. Really though, it's the answer to the question, who am I? And illness identity is how much a chronic health condition is integrated into somebody's identity. So you might be asking, what's this got to do with dizziness? It's widely accepted that people with chronic illness alter their self-concept over time, and they incorporate their illness and experiences into who they are and change their view about themselves. So within this research, we'd like to look at how people with dizziness feel about themselves and their illness, and we're hoping to see if there's an association between the topics. The better we can understand how dizziness might affect someone, the better we can understand how to help them. So who's suitable? Our criteria are that you need to be over 18 and living in the UK and have currently ongoing symptoms of dizziness for more than 6 months. Now that doesn't mean that you've been dizzy constantly for 6 months, but that you've been experiencing bouts of dizziness in whatever format over the last 6 months. So what do you do now? If you're interested in taking part and you're eligible, respond to this advert either to Kevin or to myself by the email there. I'll then send out a participant information sheet. It's really important that you read this. It's got all the information on what the study is, why we're doing it, what information we're collecting, and what we're going to do with the information from there. And then you complete a consent form. After you've done that, I'll send out the questionnaire to you online. So it's made up of 2 parts. The first part is 30 multiple choice questions on how you feel about yourself. And I know it sounds a lot, but it generally only takes about 5 minutes to complete, followed by another 25 multiple choice questions on your dizziness and you. Similarly, it takes about 5 minutes to do. You can take breaks however you wish throughout filling in this questionnaire. And then when you're done, that's all your participation complete. The outcomes I'm hoping to achieve from this research, well, it is a pilot study, so it will start to fill in some of the knowledge gap around the experiences of people with chronic dizziness. Hopefully the outcomes of the study might highlight further areas of research that are needed. And like I said earlier, if we understand all the ways in which someone is affected by their dizziness, we can try and support and care for them in all these ways. And hopefully it'll be a good experience for you too. It might give you some food for thought, and you'll know that you'll be doing your part to improve outcomes for people with dizziness in the future. So thank you all for listening to my presentation. If you have any questions or are interested in finding out more or taking part, please contact myself at the email there or Kevin. I hope you enjoy the rest of your meeting and have a nice weekend. Bye.
Brilliant. So again, don't worry, the email for Katie or my own, that will be in your members email that you get in a couple of days. But I say anyone who can participate, please do consider doing that. It really, really will help. Next, I've got a little confession to make. We have something for new members. Member-to-member contact network is brilliant. You can opt in. If you opt in, we will share your first name, email address, town or city you live near to. You can also decide if you want to give your mobile number. What is brilliant about it, you can get contact at any time, over 100 people just like you, other members, and you can natter to each other. You can find people who've got exactly the same condition that you're diagnosed with. But there's even more fun talking to others, because you'll be amazed with all the different flavors of balance conditions. 95% of what we have to deal with is so common because we've got this interruption in balance. So I really recommend it. Someone was asking me what it's like. I'm based in Leicester. I said, well, imagine you can get to talk to loads of other Leicester City fans. But the good news is with the Balance group, it's far more happy and positive than a Leicester City supporters group. So you'll have far more fun. But I do recommend it because I can tell you over the years, some of our members have made friendships that are going to last forever, because they're people just like you. They get you. They don't say, are you making it up? They just know where you're coming from and what is going on. So my confession is I found 4 emails from people wanting to join the group in January after I'd sent out the last list and I hadn't put them on. I am going to email those 4 people this weekend, say they're going on the next list, which I'm going to publish in a week's time. So anyone out there, you've got a week to just email me, kevin@lifeonthelevel.org. But what I need to know from you is, what's your diagnosis? Or if you haven't got a diagnosis, what are your symptoms? Nearest town or city, best email address, which is normally the one you're using, and if you want your mobile number adding. But I thoroughly recommend it. You just get to converse with great people. The other bonus, I know people have done this where they actually live not too far from each other on the list. They end up meeting for coffee. So real meetings, none of this virtual nonsense. So honestly, if you can, please go for that. But you've got a week to let me know. That'll be in the email as well. Then the last bit from me before we go to Michaela with questions put by Kelly. This one, we hope, is the beginning of something really good. We're calling it the Foundation. It's Life on the Level. What is it? We are affiliated with VIDA, which is, yes, it's American based, but it's the world's biggest charity for balance conditions. I know a lot about them because I volunteer my time for them as well, trying to create income for them to reach more people. And there's over 1/3 Brits are on their website every year because the resources there are brilliant. And I'll put the link on the chat. So we're proud to be associated with VIDA. One of the advantages of the contact with VIDA is we get to meet some really interesting manufacturers of product, and we're pleased to say some of those are going to donate product to us, our little old support group in the UK, and allow us to give that product away free of charge. So it's great. We, of course, will have very small quantities, and we're really looking to help those who wouldn't normally have the money to pay for such things. And that, incidentally, for many of our members, some freely have the ability, for example, to pay for private consultation, which can be wonderful. You can avoid waiting for 18 months to find out what's going wrong with you. For some people, there is not that option because they just don't have the money. And it's like that with balance aids, that if you've got no money and it's not supplied by the NHS, you've got no chance. Even if things are supplied by the NHS, you might be waiting a very long time to get them. And we all know this one, a week without being able to leave your house is a nightmare. Well, 18 months, it's just terrible. So what we've just put there, we're not changing into any form of charity. We're never having that bank account. We're never going to handle money. It's purely about trying to distribute things that could help people with balance conditions. Where do we start? We're going to start with two products. One I've known for over 5 years as a partner to Vida, the activator rehabilitation poles. Very simple, but very much like Nordic walking poles, but I've got a lot more to them. They are now available in the UK. And another confession here, I've been helping bring that product to the UK because I think it's so simple and good. So I have got, you could say, a conflict here, but not really. I'm just about helping people do more. The poles basically give you the confidence to try and move around the house and outside without that fear of falling. And unlike many other devices to help with that, you walk normally with a normal left-right gait, not stooping over a walker or a Zimmer frame. They normally sell for £125, and we have 10 pairs to give to people who apply for them. Balance belt, a really interesting one. You wear a belt around your torso. It's for people who have a complete loss of balance. So there is no balance on either side. That, you can imagine, it makes life very difficult. The belt, when worn around your body, vibrates as you move, and our amazing brains learn to detect those vibrations on your torso, and it acts as input to tell your brain how to control your muscles to balance. You'll see on an email you get next week more about that. It's incredible. We're quite lucky there. They normally cost over €4,000, and we've got one balance belt with the manufacturer paying for the UK training and support for that person. So that, we love that one, that we think that can make a huge difference. How does anyone apply for the free product? You'll see next week, and again, you'll get an email where on our website, there will be a new page about the foundation and how to apply. But quite simply, it will be an email explaining why you think that product could help you in your circumstances. How do we select who to have these things? Remember, we're just volunteers. We've got no way of means testing anyone or doing any vetting. Number one, it's only going to be the members, so we kind of know you already. Number two, we're thinking probably the only stipulation is for people to demonstrate they may already be on some form of benefits, because obviously it's really difficult to get benefits, and that would kind of explain why probably these things can't be afforded. The only other thing, and I know we've got some international members, and I know we've got some members today from the USA, we can only administer this at the moment in the UK. That may change in the future. You might be saying, if you're sitting there going, well, I'm not on benefits, so I'm never going to get any of this, so what does it matter to me? The good news, everyone who donates to the foundation is also agreeing that they will normally give a minimum of a 10% discount to our members should you want to buy their product. And there will also be what we call exclusive offers and benefits for the members. You'll get more about this via email. I'll just show you one and tell you about one little benefit that's coming up. Hopefully you see that. The great people at Activator UK, who I know quite well, are giving not 10% discount to Life on the Level members, but 40%, 40, and a 10% donation to Vida. Why they're doing this? Because they've just launched this website in Great Britain, and they would love people that they know can benefit from these the most to try them out. And the thing I've said, we'll try and encourage that if any members do go ahead and buy these, that we'll look to see if we can get feedback from the members. That you won't have to do it, but it'd be great if you would, to explain how well they've worked for you. They're really great product, really well made. And the beautiful thing for the UK, there is dedicated video, which has got techniques. There's the activator technique of how to walk safely, but there's also videos which give rehab exercises devised by physios, sitting and standing. This, again, bear in mind, it depends what your current abilities are. Some people, it's very difficult to get on their feet, so hence the sitting. But more about that next week with an email. But we're delighted to be involved in that and hopefully giving people a better way, a better quality of life. That's enough from me, thank goodness. Kelly and Michaela, if I can hand over to you both, I will just add you back into the main screen for the recording. I've lost Michaela. Where have you gone, Michaela? Sorry, I've lost you on my screen. I'm going to, no, I will add you in a moment. So Kelly, if I can ask you to start going through the first questions. And looking forward to this bit because we get some really, really good questions. Over to you. Thanks.
Fabulous. Thank you, Kevin. Michaela, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Fabulous. Right. We'll kickstart things off with a question from Vicky then. So she has asked, what are your opinions on neural circuit dizziness? She says she's been told I possibly have vestibular migraines and I do have one-sided weakness in one ear due to a stroke. She's waiting for another appointment after balance test last year to go through results.
Okay, so as I said before, balance issues, not just vestibular, but the brain itself can sometimes have problems with processing these information from all the different parts, difficulties processing, difficulties sending out the responses that things then need to take action with. So anything that affects the brain function, whether it's stroke, migraine itself is a central disorder, but it's a lot more difficult to deal with, unfortunately, than a nice, simple vestibular issue. When we're working with a central difficulty, we need to be a bit more aware, unfortunately, that sometimes we don't get things as good as we can get them. The brain is the most fantastic thing. It's what we refer to as being neuroplastic. It can make adaptations, it can make new neural pathways, new connections to kind of sometimes to completely bypass an area of the brain that's not working as it once did. Sometimes it's just altering how it behaves. So a lot of work can still be done when there are central issues going on, but it can take a lot longer. Unfortunately, it can take a lot more hard work, and we don't always get things as good as if the brain's kind of functioning perfectly normally. But that doesn't mean don't do exercises and don't do everything that you can to improve things. With migraine, there's a whole load of different things that can be tried to treat migraine. And when you get the migraine under control, believe me, that makes such a big difference. It's I can't tell you how much of a difference getting migraines under control can make. So anything that's needed to keep migraine controlled, fantastic. And then just the exercises that's given to you to try and improve the function, just keep going. Just be aware that sometimes we get to the point where we have to say, unfortunately, this is as good as it's going to get, but just keep going.
Fabulous. Thank you for that, Michaela. So Vicky is also asked, so Vicky's gone full out. She's given us 3 questions. It's fabulous. So we've done one, we're on the second one now. So she's been prescribed propranolol for vestibular migraines and to hopefully help with the added anxiety. She's asked what dosage is recommended. Usually my doctor told me 50 milligrams, but didn't say how many times a day. If that 50 milligrams is the maximum per day or per dose. Her sister has the same condition as her, but minus the stroke, and she takes 90 milligrams twice a day and is completely cured. Is that something that you'd be able to assist or advise on at all, Michaela?
The short answer to that is no.
Mm-hmm.
The longer answer is I'm a vestibular audiologist. I'm not a medic. With regards to medications and dosages, you absolutely have to speak to your consultant or your GP that's actually prescribed that. So any concerns with that whatsoever, have a chat to them.
Yeah.
Potentially have a chat to a pharmacist in the meantime if
Yeah,
you
that's a
struggle
good
to get an
idea.
appointment. Pharmacists are fantastic at being able to give all sorts of advice, but it's a medical question and therefore not something I can answer.
Absolutely. And then the final point that Vicky's asked, again, not sure how much we can go into, but we'll see. She's put, do you recommend taking magnesium or vitamin B? She hasn't been told this herself, but again, her sister has.
So magnesium and vitamin B12 particularly are things that are often suggested to try with migraine. So yep, some people find it makes quite a big difference to them. Some people not so much. Migraine is such an individual thing, and it's what works for one person doesn't work for another. But it's worth trying these things to find out. At the very least, you'll find out that no, that doesn't work for me. And if it does work for you, fantastic.
Thank you. So next on our list is somebody's asked that they understand that they need to do their rehab exercises and they do try mindfulness and other calming techniques. Other than the 2 areas, can you suggest any other areas of practice, activity, mental exercise, or anything at all that will help speed up my eventual recovery to a more normal life, please? But sorry, it's vague, but I wondered what else I can do whilst I'm at home so much.
Firstly, one of the best things that you can do is walk. So whether it's just to the end of the garden and back, if that's all you can manage, or being able to go for slightly longer walks, doing that on a daily basis, it's brilliant physically, it's brilliant for vestibular function, it's good mentally. And same with things like, as I say, Tai Chi and Pilates, those kind of things. The point though about making things faster, you can't make things faster than the brain works. You've got to work with your brain, not fight against it. If you keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and fighting against it to try and force it to do something, you will overstimulate it, you will overwhelm it, and it won't be able to do what you're wanting it to do. You've got to pace yourself and just take it nice and steady. And it takes the time it takes, unfortunately. And that's okay.
Just a quickie there, Michaela. Something, and this is not meant to be a competitive thing that makes you do more and more, but some members have mentioned how they keep a record of, first of all, they're able to walk to the garden gate, and then a week too late they get to do another 50 yards down the road, and it's just this recording of sort of little milestones, and it shows them a record, a bit like you were saying, if you don't write things you forget them anyway, but it's almost sort of keeping a record of how you are getting to a better place, you're able to do more, and it's not making a game of it, but it sort of could be various things you struggle to do, of just seeing how much better you can get without pushing yourself, of course. And the bit I always add is the snakes and ladder caution, that you might go for weeks and weeks getting better and better and better, and then then you come crashing back down, and we all feel we've gone back to square one. Boy, that used to happen so much to me. It's so, I was so disappointed. You kid yourself. That's it. I'm over it. I'm free. It's never going to happen again. And then the next day, bang. But that is part of the course. That's why it's not like breaking a leg that just
No.
gets better and is better at the end of it. This is far more complex. But just mention that I know one or two members have had great joy in seeing how they do more and get better. And if you're stuck at home, there's little challenges you can think of without pushing yourself. Thanks. I'm off again. Thank you.
The thing to remember is that you will get good days and bad days. The bad
Yeah.
days often are due to stress, tiredness, or feeling unwell with yourself in other things, like picking up a cold or these kinds of things. So it's normal to get blips. You're not always just going to kind of get better and better and better and better and better. You're going to get better and better and then have a bit of a blip down. You're never going back to square one, is the thing to remember. You haven't lost all the achievement that you've made. You haven't lost all that knowledge and understanding that you've gained up to this point. You get bad days,
Yeah.
they pass. But
Yeah.
you can't make things faster than they're going to. Just keep going really consistently, and you will absolutely head in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's some really good advice. And it definitely resonates with me this morning, because this morning I woke up, had a really bad night's sleep, and I thought, you know what, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to make the meeting today. And if we've got a dog, I know it's a case of like, I don't really want to go out. I don't think I can walk the dog, but I'm like, no, that's what the advice is, always go and take for a short walk. And I went out with the dog with my husband, and we walked really slowly, but it did make a difference to make the fact, I'm sat here this afternoon. So yeah, definitely people can kind of do that, but it's not always easy, is it, as we know? Okay, so Lenny and Ali then have submitted a question, more so on behalf of Ali, who suffers with anxiety. His anxiety can be really extreme at times, and he wakes up at 4 a.m. every night with a panic attack. That's awful. And this makes him unable to sleep and is very frightening. Is there anything that could be done, do you think, to help with that, Michaela?
I think that's probably not going to be a nice, straightforward, just
No.
try mindfulness techniques. I'd be interested as to what it is that's waking him up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
then triggering the panic attack. But if the anxiety is really extreme and you're getting lots of panic attacks, it's going to fall into the category of seek further support. So whether that's through your GP or there's lots of talking therapies that can be accessed, or someone like myself. But yeah, I think outside assessment and support is going to be probably the best way to go for that.
And a lot of the talking therapies you can now are self-refer. You don't have to just go through your GP. I know particularly in Leicestershire there's been that move.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to Claire then. She said that she's doing extreme VRT now and is pretty much cured from VM, so vestibular migraine, I'm assuming, because Hawthorne Cooksey was easy. She wanted to fly and use lifts without being ill in them. And she's now doing what the last VRT specialist recommended, doing one floor at a time. But they even went in 19 times during our last holiday, but didn't seem to feel any different, although it is only bad when she's doing it and not after. And she's asking, how long is it before she'll see changes, do you think?
Now, the difficult thing with migraine is that we are not good travellers and we are motion sensitive. It's how our brain is wired. Now, vestibular rehab exercises will help vestibular issues and therefore may help some degree of motion sensitivity. But often what we find is when it's migrainous in nature, there's not a lot that you can do, unfortunately, that changes that sensitivity. We're just special that way.
In so many ways.
I fully understand because I'm the same. I have horrific migraines sometimes, but I'm exceedingly motion sensitive, and I'm absolutely the one that's in the lift or in the plane and you go, oh, that's moving, and the person next to me is going, no, it's not. You go, oh no, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so next question that we've got then is we've got somebody that's not seen a vestibular rehab specialist for some time now, so they've said about 3 years. They don't feel that their overall average daily balance is any better over this time. And they're asking, do you recommend that they go back for more treatment in terms of has anything changed in treatment in the last 3 years?
It depends on the diagnosis, whether there's been other issues that have kind of contributed into what's happening at the moment. So it might well be worth going back and having a chat to your therapist, your physiotherapist, or the audiologist that you saw, and having a chat for them to assess what difficulties you're having and what potentially could be done for that. Certainly nothing to lose by asking.
Thank you there. So next one we've got is from Carolyn. Then they've asked whether you could give some advice regarding bereavement with mindfulness or something similar.
Firstly, I'm really sorry for your experience and the loss that you've had. Remember, as much as nobody wants to feel sad and upset, it's a normal emotion. It's part of the brain's way of dealing and processing the experiences that we're having. So it's not a bad thing to have these feelings. Where necessary, seek support from loved ones, family, friends, potentially have a chat to GP for suitable referral for a counsellor that specialises in grief management if needs be. But anything mindfulness wise that your brain lets yourself lose yourself with, it's not something I can say do this one or do that one.
Yeah.
It's a trial and error thing to find what it is that works for you. But the only way sometimes you find what works for you is just to randomly have a go at these things, and see what happens. But breathing techniques, anything that gets your brain just focusing in on something other than your thoughts or all those kinds of things. Getting out in nature is one of the greatest things mental health wise, being able to go into a space where there's greenery, where there's trees, watching the squirrels pottering about and watching the birds, these kinds of things can be very helpful. But if needs be, it's kind of that human interaction, I think, sometimes with grief, being able to speak to somebody and reminisce about the person that you lost and share those good memories that you have with them. But yeah, see what support's available for you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Michaela. So some great tips there for Carolyn at this difficult time. Okay, next question that we've got then is that understand that it's very common to suffer with visual preference, where I think my brain uses my vision to help find my balance, as my balance organs are too weak currently. I get what I think is common symptoms of bad feelings when in a supermarket, and sometimes when in open spaces, and always if something moves rapidly on a screen. This may sound ridiculous, but would wearing something that limits my field of vision help reduce this problem? May not be as silly as horse blinkers, but something like that maybe, or glasses frames. I think for starters, nothing is silly asking in this group, is it at all, Michaela?
Absolutely not.
We've seen it all, and there's more I'm sure we'll see.
Most of the time when people say, I've got a really weird one or a really daft question, really sick, I've heard it so many times before.
Yeah, I can imagine, yeah.
From an awful lot of people, and it's a perfectly normal one of the things to think of and to experience. Firstly, that is the most fantastic summary of vestibular difficulty with a visual preference. The supermarkets, the moving things on screen, beautiful summary and absolutely visual preference. Interestingly, with regards to the reducing visual field, I was listening to a presentation. There's a group of all sorts of different specialities that kind of get together and have meetings about all kinds of things that are kind of balance related and kind of other sort of slightly more neurological side of things. But they had a ophthalmology consultant talking, and they were saying, oddly enough, it popped into their head to try somebody to reduce their field to see how it impacted them to try and help with things. And they got magic tape. So it's tape that's obscured. So normal sellotape is completely clear. This is tape that's kind of more matte. So it's not completely clear. And putting a couple of very, very narrow strips on the person's glasses on the inside, so the nose part of the glasses. And she found it really did quite help them.
Wow.
So there's no research into this at the moment, but she's tried it with a few different people, and she said there's some people seem to have been kind of better with different coloured strips, but actually having just that really narrow bit in the middle of the glasses seems to help.
That sounds good. Also, just on the chat from Rosie, she says she finds holding her hand or an object in my near vision, close vision, helps when she's having those issues. So that's, again, whether that's the brain focusing on something is.
Yeah, well, putting the hands that way really limits your visual field, so it's going to limit how much movement there is in it. But I was particularly interested by it being the two strips just in the middle. Because with it being in the middle, kind of you're still getting a pretty good full peripheral vision. But it's just reducing things just a little bit in each eye. I thought it was very, very interesting, and I'm dying to hear what others make of it and trial with.
But so the interest with it, again, for newer members who are just starting out on the balance journey, it's just to understand it's perfectly normal to get these effects. They're not the pleasant ones. I tell you, there are times in a supermarket I was using the trolley was my walking rollator frame because I'm there leaning on it and almost trying to look down because all those shelves of all those brightly coloured products, it's just, it's awful. And for me, within 30 seconds of entering the supermarket, it was just there. So, but that's good. I like the tape. We must find out more about that, Michaela.
I was very interested to
definitely
kind of hear more about it of people that possibly have tried it. But there is lots of exercises that we can do that help reduce that visual preference. The tape obviously isn't something that's going to make your brain understand things differently and therefore change for it. The exercises, your brain will actually make the changes needed to reduce those difficulties happening. So yeah, it's lots that can be done. And I think
Brilliant.
lots of new things to come at some point when we know these things a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds interesting. We'll watch this space on that one, I guess. Okay, next one we've got is that we've got somebody then they're confused by BPPV, and to put that some people they know have got BPPV and only get specific problems when turning over in bed or lying down quickly on the back. But they were told years ago that they've got BPV, but also get days of off balance, but not severe attacks. So do you think they could also have BPPV or could have something else as well?
Yes. To both.
That's the short answer to the question.
I'd like to keep it short where I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the joy of vestibular issues. You're not necessarily experiencing just one issue. You can have more than one balance condition happening at the same time. You can have more than one balance condition happening at different times, and sometimes they overlap, sometimes they don't. It's part of, on my side of things, the fun in balance treatment and diagnosing and working out what's going on, because it's not always the same thing. So BPPV is something that it can come and go. It can be that you get kind of clear, the room spinning when you lie down, when you move your head into certain positions, but the rest of the time you feel absolutely fine. Other times there can be the BPPV where absolutely you get the spinning or the feeling of movement in those particular head movements. But then in between times, things are just not quite right. Not necessarily enough to be able to say exactly what's wrong, but enough that your brain's saying something's not right. In that case, often just treating it with the Epley maneuver will resolve that. But sometimes we actually also need to do vestibular rehab exercises if there's a bit of asymmetry in the function of the balance system, as well as the BPPV.
Right. Sorry, both. Just Rosie again has given us a link to a website. It's about your glasses, Michaela. So I'm just quickly going to share a picture. Obviously, we don't know anything about the website or the glasses, so we're not saying rush and buy them today. But if I just click on
Oh,
that,
you can
hopefully
see, can't you? Yeah, they've got like a bit missing or like shaded in.
tape. It's almost like tape in the
Yeah.
I'm quite interested that they're listing them as anti-travel sickness glasses. I'm
yeah.
not convinced on that, but yeah, that's the kind of thing that
A
this lady
theory.
was talking about.
Interesting shot. So yeah, sorry about that. I just thought I'd share that. The Rosie's put the link on the chat. By the way, everyone, you get a copy of the chat is emailed to you after the meeting.
Yeah.
So you'll have all the links available to you. Right, I'll hand back to you, Kelly.
Thank you. Okay, so I've got one more question on the pre-submitted ones, Michaela, and then I'm going to have a hunt through the chat to see if there's anything come in whilst you've been presenting earlier this afternoon. So if anybody has got any questions before we start wrapping things up today, just please start putting them in the chat because I'll get to them eventually. So Alex has said that they've been diagnosed with 27% right ear canal paresis. I've done at-home vestibular exercises over the past 8 months and are steady on her feet, with her feet. If you look at me, you wouldn't know I have this condition, but in my head, I still constantly get the dizziness and swoosh feeling. And they've asked, will this ever go away?
Potentially, yes, but there's no guarantee. When there's an asymmetry in function, we're not, with the exercises, we're not undoing any damage that's there. We're getting your brain to learn what the difference is and to work with that as best as it can from there. So yes, often we can get things to the point where people can go about their normal daily activities without any particular struggles or issues. Sometimes we don't get as close to it as we would like. It's yeah, keep going with the exercises. 8 months, unfortunately, can still be quite a short period of time in the rehab process. It's important to get the exercises tailored to the specific difficulties it is that you're having. So kind of these programs where you do set A, set B, set D, set E, and so on, it's not kind of symptom specific. It's kind of a generalized approach, which means you'll get a generalized improvement, but there's going to still be lots of other particular things that you will have difficulty with. And this is one of the particular things with Cawthorne-Cooksey exercises, is that it helps with some parts of imbalance, but not all of it. So getting a really good customized approach and just dealing with each bit, each step of the way is absolutely essential. But absolutely things can be better than they are.
Which is always what we like to hear, isn't it? Okay, so I've started hunting through the chat and I found a question already. So this one's from Rosie. They've put that they've got many ears, but recently been getting specific vertigo when lying down, turning over in bed, which they hadn't really had before. As a result, they've had multiple vertigo attacks lasting several hours during the night. And when they saw an ENT consultant, he said that Meniere's isn't triggered by movement, but then why am I specifically only having attacks recently when lying down? Anything you can offer on that?
Obviously, I can't diagnose things over
Of course, yeah.
this. It's very, very typical of BPPV to occur when you're lying down and turning over in bed at night. There is a very large overlap with Meniere's, not only with migraine, but also with BPPV. So the Meniere's itself weakens things within the vestibular system in that one side, which can make it more likely for the calcium crystals to come loose. So I would probably advise seeking another opinion.
Thank you, Michaela. So I'm scrolling. There's lots from Kevin in this chat today. Lots of chat about Professor Ray, and people found him really helpful when speaking to him, or the other presentations we've had over the many years now.
Yeah. Oh, you're looking there, Michaela. I don't know if you can see that, but
Oh, there you go.
I've been very busy with my frosted sellotape and scissors while you've been talking. Very odd looking through them, but I'm quite honestly fascinated with that, whether it does work. So I wouldn't recommend being seen wearing my version, but
I don't know how narrow or wide the
yeah.
strips would be, and I take no responsibility for any sellotape residue left on your glasses lenses if you try this.
Good. I couldn't see any more questions, Michaela. I don't know about you. Anyone? We can do the old trusted favourite. If anyone can either physically raise their hand or
Yeah.
use the Zoom
Looking.
to raise, you can
Oh,
raise a
there's
virtual.
something from, sorry, Kevin. There's something from Eve in the chat. They've put that, not sure if it's answered, but whilst we're here, we might as well see if there's anything anyone's got on this, Michaela, or otherwise. The question is about, would anybody recommend stopping antihistamines when starting a program of neurophysiotherapy? Are some antihistamines more effective than others?
So from a vestibular physiotherapy side of
Yeah.
things, ideally we want people to not be on vestibular suppressants. So vestibular suppressants obviously dumbs down the function of the balance system in the ears to make you feel better. Vestibular physiotherapy, we need to stimulate the balance systems to get things working better and harder. So obviously it's going in completely opposite directions. Now, obviously with some conditions, medication is necessary, and I'm certainly not going to be saying you need to stop that. But when medication has been prescribed purely as a, let's do this to get rid of the symptoms for a simple vestibulopathy, for example, then actually long term that's not helpful. So it's worth speaking to the person that you're doing your physiotherapy with, or the person that's prescribed the medication. But where possible, if you are taking the medication and you are advised or wanting to come off of it, gradually wean yourself off it rather than just stopping. Because if you're on a vestibular suppressant and you suddenly stop it, the balance function will suddenly go back up to what it was doing before, which isn't right. So you'll feel an awful lot worse. So you want to gradually kind of ease yourself out of that whilst you're bringing in your exercises that are helpfully retuning things. Any further kind of information about medication, you do need to speak to the prescribing doctor.
Yeah. We might have touched upon this already, but since Alexandra's put it in the chat, I'm going to put it out to you, Michaela, and see if there's anything else to add on from perhaps what we've talked about earlier. But they've put, what are the best exercises for dizziness when moving their head? So, for example, when doing things like emptying the dishwasher, folding laundry, etc. They can't afford to pay for anything privately, but they're just asking if there's any other tips you can suggest.
First stop is always going to be VOR. Gradually build that up, so you can start off nice and gently and you can gradually build up the speed, potentially changing from doing that sitting down to standing up. Any kind of head movements, but doing exactly the same thing really, really repetitively and really consistently. If you're doing lots of different movements at different times, the brain's not getting the chance to actually make any adjustments to it. Your brain will just recognize, oh, that feels odd. Whereas you give it exactly the same information over and 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 over, it starts to get the idea and it starts to make the changes. So being really, really repetitive with those movements that don't feel that nice, but keep doing it, it will get easier.
Fabulous. Thank you for answering all of the questions. I've been through the chat and the pre-submitted one, so I think that's everything. So thanks for everybody that has put questions for Michaela to answer this afternoon. Kevin, did you see anybody's hands up? Because I haven't been monitoring.
No, so this is your last chance, folks, to ask Michaela a question. No, I don't think we've got any takers, mate. I think you've done such a good job today. You've answered everyone's questions before they ask them. So
Fabulous.
I think we are done today.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Sounds like it.
yeah, Michaela, thanks ever so much for everything you do. Another great presentation and brilliant answers to the questions. I did have one last question, which and it's not meant to be controversial because I always wonder about this. And you might say that because I know you've seen thousands and thousands of patients. Are there any traits you detect in a patient that may make it more probable that they'll go through that journey to come out the other side in a better way, faster or better? Are there any traits that you see in what I'd say is a good patient compared to a bad patient? Without naming names, but I just wondered if there were traits you believe you can see.
I think the people that I see that go through the process more easily are those that kind of they're not frightened by their symptoms. They're not frightened by the difficulties they're having. They acknowledge these are the problems I'm having. What do we need to do about it? What can I do about it? Because all I can do is give people advice as to how they make themselves better. I can't make you better, but I can tell you how you make yourself better. And the people that go, okay, I take responsibility for doing my exercises and doing them 4 times every day and not just every now and then. People that are comfortable with the fact that it's going to take many, many months of work and not just a couple of weeks and then give up. They get through it an awful lot more easily. The ones that unfortunately it's a lot harder for are those that potentially are more vulnerable, that they're more frightened of falling or of doing something that makes their symptoms worse and are kind of very caught in that vicious cycle of avoidance tactics. And that, yeah, the anxiety and the stress just spirals.
Yeah,
Those
no,
are
I
unfortunately the ones that
understand.
find it harder. So I know
Yeah,
it's an awful lot easier to say, try not to get stressed about it, keep doing your exercises every day, but it does make a difference as you've recognized yourself when you're actually in that position of being able to kind of experience that difficulty in calmness and being able to say, this is really not good, but it will pass and it always passes and it will pass again. It just makes it so much easier.
yeah, no, definitely. Thanks. One last thing from a previous presentation, didn't I? Will link this on the email after the meeting. You did tips to all of us on how to probably get the best from our doctors and consultants. So I will list that again. There is an art to this to try and help, such as Michaela and her colleagues, to do the best for us, is to go well prepared. Uh, and the only other thing I add to that, because trust me, still see this every year from so many members. There are an awful lot of GPs out there that don't know the first thing about balance conditions. So that's very frustrating. And if you feel you're not getting helpful, constructive advice treatment, then seek another opinion. Just keep fighting until you believe you're going to. Really difficult because none of us are balance experts, but it's just my urge to people out there is don't. Ironically, don't take it lying down. Um, Go
The
on,
thing I'll just
Michaela.
jump in on that is when you're seeking medical help, it's so important to be really specific. Now, you've got to remember GPs, they do a really, really hard job. They've got to know a little bit about such a wide variety of different things. I have the advantage, I get to know a huge amount by one tiny, tiny bit of the body, which puts me at a great advantage. if you're going into the GP, for example, and sitting there and saying, I'm dizzy, all the time, I'm dizzy, that could be caused by potentially thousands of different causes. And where do you go first to help with that? So the more specific you are able to be and sit down to your GP and being able to say, for example, I'm dizzy every time I lie down, turn over in bed, but it only lasts about 30 seconds and then it seems to pass. Or my balance is really off. I don't feel quite right. And I've got pain just here. And the light is just a bit too much and it's painful. These kinds of specific bits of information can really help direct to what the right diagnosis is or to the right speciality to refer you to. So being as specific as you can will make your life so much easier and make our lives so much easier.
No, brilliant. Okay, Michaela, thanks ever so much for your time. 12th of April, Saturday, 1 p.m. That is our next meeting when we're going to have another wonderful expert like Michaela to sort us all out. So you're all allowed now. You can switch microphones on and cheer and clap. Just thanks ever so much, Michaela. You've done a really good job. Thanks everyone for being on today. All your wonderful questions, comments on the chat. It's brilliant. So all of you do the best you can, and we'll see you in a couple of months. Thanks ever so much, Michaela. Brilliant job. Thanks
everyone.
Kelly.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye,
Take care, Anne.
bye, bye. Bye,
Thank you.
bye, bye.
Bye.